this meeting to order. 17 in Pittsylvania County. Call to order. Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Here.
Mr. Blackstock?
Present.
Mr. Farmer?
Here.
Mr. Scarce?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Davis?
Present. I'd like to ask all if you would join me a moment in silence. Thank you. Join me, those who can stand, pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. Item number 5, agenda items to be added.
Mr. Chairman, I've been asked to make a motion to add under matters from work session as item 14C, out-of-county solid waste, and to add a closed session, potential solid waste convenience center sites to the agenda.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Scarce. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second by Mr. Barber. Is there any further discussion on the approval of the agenda items to be added? Okay, hearing none.
All right, please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
Motion passes unanimous. Item number 6, the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agenda with the additional corrections.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Warren.
Second.
Second by Mr. Blackstock. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
Motion passes unanimous. Number 7, consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in the board packet.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blackstock. I have a motion. Second. By Mr. Blackstock, second by Mr. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
Item carries unanimously. Number 8, presentations.
We have.
We have none. Thank you. Item number 9, hearing of the citizens. Each person addressing the board on the hearing of the citizens shall be a resident or landowner of the county, or the registered agent of such resident or landowner. Each person shall step up, give his or her name and district in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless further time is granted by the chairman, shall limit his or her address to 3 minutes. No person shall be permitted to address the board more than once during hearing of the citizens. All remarks shall be addressed to the board as a body and not to any individual member thereof. Hearing of the citizens shall last a maximum of 45 minutes. Any individual that is signed up to speak during said section who does not get the opportunity to do so because of the aforementioned time limit shall be given speaking priority at the next board meeting. Absent the chairman's approval, no person shall be able to speak who has not signed up. I would like to add the public hearings to rezoning. Item number 10, public hearings. Pursuant to Article 5, Division 6 of the Pittsylvania County zoning ordinance, the Board of Supervisors have been empowered to hear and decide specific zoning issues and zoning map changes in support of said ordinance. In accomplishing this important task, the board is responsible for promoting the health, safety, and general public welfare of the citizens of Pittsylvania County. The board must ensure that all of its decisions and regulations be directed to these goals and that each be consistent with the environment, comprehensive plan, and in the best interest of Pittsylvania County and its citizens and its posterity. Mr. Greg Sides.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We open the public hearing for case 1.
All right, I open this public hearing at 7:05 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Case 1, R-19-014. Jasmine Barbie has petitioned to rezone 3.77 acres located on State Road 622, Cascade Road, in the Tunstall Election District from R1 Residential Suburban Subdivision District to A1 Agricultural District to allow for subdivision of the property for a family member. Once the property is rezoned to A1 and all uses listed under Section 35-178 are permitted. The Planning Commission recommended by unanimous vote with no opposition that the petitioner's request be granted. Staff summary is enclosed in the board packet, and Mr. Chairman, Ms. Barbie is here to present the petition.
Ms. Barber, would you like to step up and speak?
I didn't have anything to say, I just didn't know how to come up.
All right, thank you, ma'am. I don't believe anybody spoke in rebuttal either,
Thank you, Ms. Barbie.
but thank you.
No one else signed up for this case, Mr. Chairman, so you may close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Sides. I close this public hearing at 7:07.
All right, it's now time for motions.
We have a motion from the board.
Mr. Chairman, case R-19-014, I'd like to make a motion to rezone this property from R1 to A1.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ross. Seconded by Dr. Miller. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast, I'll now close the vote.
The motion carries unanimously. Ms. Barber, your property's been rezoned. We'd love for you guys to stay, but if you don't wish to stay because of the lengthy meeting could be, you're at liberty to leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Case number 2, Mr. Sides.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you may open the public hearing for case 2.
All right, I open this public hearing at 7:08 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Case 2, R-19-019. Matthew and Jennifer Miller have petitioned to rezone 15.24 acres located on State Road 665, Fairmont Road, in the County's Gretna Election District from R1 Residential Suburban Subdivision District to A1 Agricultural District for agricultural use. Once the property is rezoned to A1, then all uses listed under Section 35-178 are permitted use. The Planning Commission recommended by unanimous vote with no opposition that the petitioner's request be granted. Staff summary is enclosed in the board packet, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. and Mrs. Miller are here to represent the petition.
All right, thank you. Mr. and Ms. Miller, do you have anything you'd like to add to tonight's discussion?
Gentlemen of the Board of Supervisors, my wife and I are new to Pittsylvania County, we're new to Virginia. We did have a hobby farm in Oregon where we were moving from for 10 years that we had with 2 full-time jobs. And now we'd like your permission to use our 15 acres to their full potential here and hopefully make enough, a subsistence farm that will take care of our needs and hopefully pay for itself.
Thank you, Mr. and Ms. Miller. Thank you. You may have a seat.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we had no one else sign up to speak on this case. You may close the public hearing.
close this public hearing at 7:09 p.m.
All right, this case is ready for a motion.
What's the nature of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for case R-19-019 that we rezone 15.224 acres from R1 residential suburban subdivision to A1 agricultural district.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Warren. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Farmer and a seconded by Mr. Warren. Is there any further discussion?
A quick
Yes, sir.
question. In our board packet, normally under recommendations, we have the results of the planning commission vote. I don't see that in there on either one of these two cases today.
It's in the summary.
Is it in the summary? But it doesn't,
Said with no opposition, I don't know if it doesn't usually vote right here in the summary.
it's not on mine.
I ain't got some reason. I know it's true.
Okay.
We don't have the summary.
It's not in the normal order.
It's-
I see
I
the
see the planning commission, no opposition, and something. I do see
some
that,
summary,
but-
yeah. It's not in a normal place, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I've got used to that over the years, and I was looking for it.
All right, any further discussion? Anyone? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast, I'll now close the vote.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. and Ms. Miller, your property has been rezoned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item B, other public hearings. I want to make sure that I'm following what I'm supposed to do. Thank you, Counselor. Each person addressing the board under other public hearings shall step up, give his or her name and district and his or her place of residency for non-county citizens in an audible tone of voice for the record. And unless further time is granted by the chairman, shall limit his or her address to 3 minutes. Speakers for a group shall be limited to 10 minutes. Speakers shall conclude their remarks at that time. Unless the consent of the board is affirmatively given to extend this speaker's allotted time, absent the chairman's approval, no person shall be able to speak who is not signed up. Mr. Hunt.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you may now open the public hearing.
Thank you. I open this public hearing at 7:12 p.m.
Just for the board's explanation, each year, the board and the Virginia Department of Transportation are required to hold a public hearing to receive citizen input on the proposed secondary 6-year VDOT plan. Jay Craddock, VDOT Assistant Resident Engineer, is present and will present the proposed plan to the board for potential adoption.
Good evening, Mr. Craddock.
Good evening. I think y'all covered what I was going to read, so I'll just get right into the proposed 6-year plan. I'm not going to read everything that's in your packet. I'll give the road name and the anticipated start date, and if you have any questions, just stop me. The first two we plan on doing in September of this year will be Buckhorn Road and Alderson Road. And then we've got two on the list that actually we started on last year, but we pulled off of them when the storms hit and fall there, Abbott Place and Mac Road, so we'll finish those up this year. And then the next one is Lester Road, which we also plan to do this fall, and Hickey Road, which we also plan to do this fall. And then Rogers Road, which we also plan to do this fall. Then this next one is a typo. It says 2021, it should be 2020, Farmers Road. And then also in 2020, we have Bayless Drive, Church Lane, Wrights Road, Robertson Road, Happy Lane, Stone Road, Cooksburg Road. I'm sorry, Cooksburg Road is 2021. And then also in 2021, we have Tosh's Road and another section of Tosh's Road. So right now there are two unpaved segments, and once those are both done, the entire road will be paved. and then Cox's Store Mill. And then in 2022, we have Gandy Road, Ed Hardy Road, and those are the only two in 2022. 2023, we've got Mills Road, Mellon Road, Cherrystone Lake Road, and that's it for 2023. 2024, we have Darby Road, Hubbard Road, Oak Mill Road. And then you see the next one on the list is a little different. In just starting in fiscal year 25, we're no longer going to do each individual road as its own separate project. We'll just have one project for all the unpaved roads, and then we'll just list each individual road as a subheading in that one project. So that's something new that started this year. So in 2025, it'll be just one project with the following roads: Oliver's Lane, Friendly Drive, Oxford Road, and Pocket Road.
I don't see Pocket listed on this,
It says 924, but somehow the Pocket Road part got cut off, but 924 is Pocket Road.
okay.
And the rest is just county cost center money. So, at this time, we solicit comments from the public concerning this priority list. I would ask that anyone wishing to speak come forward and speak into the microphone so we can have a clear recording of your comments. Also, please state your name and magisterial district for the record. Let me remind you that this is a public hearing and not a question and answer session. So as not to prolong the hearing for everyone, anyone with questions can reserve them until after the hearing, and I'll be happy to discuss them with you at that time. Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chairman, no one has signed up for this public hearing. And so, unless you have additional questions for Mr. Craddock, it's appropriate at this time to close the public hearing.
Are there any further questions from?
One.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kraft, first of all, I want to say thank you for the great job you do for the county. And secondly, I was waiting to see where the priorities was. That Ed Hardy Road, could you get them to go check that road? Because it suffered a lot of damage in that hurricane. And I didn't know if you've been out there, watched, me and Mr. Scare share that road. We joined at the bridge, and there's a bunch of potholes in that bridge area because of water going over.
Yes, sir.
Check it out. I didn't know where it was at on priority list, so I was waiting to see where it was at, but it needs a little TLZ over there.
Okay, we'll check it out.
Any further
Thank you.
discussion? Thank you. I close this public hearing at 7:17 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the VDOT secondary 6-year plan FY 2023, FY 2025 be approved, and that the county administrator be authorized to sign any necessary documentation.
Thank you.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Barber. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none? Yeah, we got a second by Mr. Barber. Oh, okay.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast, I'll now close the vote.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Mr. Craddock.
Thank y'all very much.
Mr. Chairman, the second other public hearing has been withdrawn by AEP, and they will be here in July for a public hearing. So there's no more other public hearings, and you can move on to the next agenda item, please.
Thank you, Counselor. Unfinished business, potential enterprise zone amendment approval, public hearing, advertisement authorization. Mr. Matthew Rudd. Yes, Ms. Susan. Come right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. You heard it loud and clear at the May meeting during the Enterprise Zone public hearing, the desire to include Harbury Military Academy in Zone 57 due to plans for improvement. After further discussion with applicable individuals, staff went back to the map and determined that there was enough acreage in Zone 57 to include Harbury Military Academy, thus can accommodate this valid public comment. At the direction of the county administrator, the option was presented to the legislative committee, and the committee gave unanimous support to present this option to the board this evening. If this body is receptive to the valid public comment, staff respectfully requests that the board direct it to notify the affected property owners of the addition and to hold another public hearing at the Board of Supervisor meeting in July to include Harvard Military Academy and the proposed enterprise zone boundary amendment for Zone 57. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Need a motion, right?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we amend the enterprise zone to include enterprise zone 57 as part of it, which encompasses the desires of Harvard.
Second. Second by Mr. Barber. Any further discussion now?
But I believe Ms. McAuliffe is looking for us to make a motion to approve the advertisement of the public hearing.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Okay.
To advertise a public hearing and notify the surrounding citizens.
Okay, so we voted, we've had a motion and a second for a public hearing. Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I'll now close the vote.
Passes unanimously. We will have a public hearing. Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item 12, new business. Mrs. Kimberly G. Vanderhyde, Riffelcane Creek Bond refinancing authorization. Thank you.
Yes, what you have before you tonight is a refinancing of our Riffelcane Creek bonds that were originally issued in 2005, and the total amount of $7.3 million, and that was to fund the expenses related to developing the Cane Creek Center. And so this project is a jointly owned project between the city of Danville and the county. So Danville and the county recently received a credit commitment from Wells Fargo Bank to refinance the 2016 taxable revenue refunding bonds. The principal amount being refinanced at this time is at an amount not to exceed $2,545,000. The rate that has been negotiated with Wells Fargo is an indicative rate of 3.95% for a term of 5.5 years, and this will actually pay off those notes. So they'll be paid off in 2025. A moral obligation pledge will be required from both the Danville City Council and the county in the form of support agreements. This will not add to the county's existing moral obligations. It will simply replace the existing support agreement that will expire with the current letter of credit. The REFA Board approved its resolution to refinance at its June 10th meeting. Danville will also pass a similar resolution as the one being presented to you all tonight at their meeting that's being held now, as we speak. The approval of the attached support agreement is necessary to finalize the bank documents before August 1st, 2019. The bonds will be repaid annually based on appropriations by the county and the city, with each being responsible for 1/2 of the debt. A total of $285,000 is already budgeted in the 2020 budget to cover our share of that debt obligation, which just continues. We've been paying that obligation since 2005, and that is for half. So the city would pay that amount as well. So we recommend as staff that you all approve the bond refinancing, and we will contact Chris Colt, who is serving as bond counsel, to let him know to initiate the paperwork to get that refinancing accomplished.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderhyde. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the attached support agreement and resolution number 2019-06-01 to refinance RIFA's outstanding revenue refunding bond series 2016.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Warren. Second. Second by Dr. Miller. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
That motion carries unanimously, Mr. Vanderhyde. Item B, Colonial Pipeline Grant Appropriation.
Yes, we recently received a check from Colonial Pipeline in the amount of $10,000, and that was for a hazmat grant. And so this money will be used by the county's public safety department to purchase hazmat supplies. So in order for them to spend this money that came in, you all will need to appropriate the $10,000 for them to make this purchase. And these funds do not require local match, they just need to be placed in our grants fund.
Thank you, Ms. Brenda Hyde.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the Colonial Pipeline grant and appropriate $10,000 to the grants fund as listed in our board packet.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock. Second by Mr. Barber. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast, I'll now close the vote.
Motion carries unanimously. Item C, radio tower project change order. Mr. Hicks.
Okay, back in 2017, November, the board took bids on the construction of 2 additional radio towers and equipment that goes on those towers. At that time, this was Jim Davis's project, but the board awarded the bid for the equipment, but our construction bids on the tower were significantly over budget. So did award the bid on the equipment, so that stuff would be ordered. That was a long elapsed time on when it would actually be ordered and arrive on the site. So, again, the board awarded the bid for the equipment. We went back and we met with the construction company and spent several months going back and forth on trying to get the cost in budget. We were successful in that, and you awarded the construction portion of these 2 towers in June of 2018. Sometime later that year, I think the end of 2018, we had to get permits from FERC and some additional federal agencies. That's about the same time Trump sent everybody home. So that added another 60 to 90 days on that project. And just in the last few weeks, we are finally under construction on the towers. We've ordered the change order for the modifications to the Kentucky towers. Both cellular companies have agreed to pay their 1/3 cost of that portion of the project. And now we're looking at hopefully being all 3 portions of the project, the construction of the 2 towers, the Kentucky modifications, and the installation of the equipment on the towers. We hope will be sometime around the end of September 2019. Harris has been about a year beyond schedule, beyond their control. Time you awarded their bid in 2017, and they won't even be able to start until August or September 2019. So what should have been a 1-year project for them has turned into a 2-year project. They've asked for a change order and a project cost increase of $16,275, and they will move the acceptance date on the project to September 23rd, 2019. So they've been waiting a year to install their equipment, and it was at no fault of their own. It was just because we weren't prepared to start construction of the towers because of these issues I mentioned here. So I'm trying to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, we need to put that in the motion first. Second, correct? What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to get where we talk. I make a motion to approve change order 3 to amendment number 6 with Harrison in the amount of $16,275 and the extension of the acceptance date to September the 23rd, 2019.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, thank you. I have a second.
I'll second it to get it on the floor.
Mr. Warren seconds it. All right, any further discussion from the board members?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Palmer.
Mr. Hunt, was there any provisions in our current contract warning us of this, like a delay would incur additional cost?
No, there was an allowance for change orders, but there's no specific provision about additional calls based on time.
We're on.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smotherman, where the $16,000, do we have that in a contingency line item for this particular project?
Not for this particular project, would be general contingencies, my understanding. Is that right?
Or we're going to use building, we've got some capital money in building and maintenance.
So we could choose 3 capital money or contingencies. So it's general fund, capital fund. Those are our 2 choices.
And see, when the bid was awarded for the construction of the towers, we allocated every single dollar we had on this project.
Mr. Hunt, do you feel like that, due to the way the contractors were wrote up, that we don't really have a choice with this? I mean, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like the equipment's already been bought, so we don't have to pay for it.
I believe that it would be wise, it's necessary to pay for this.
I appreciate every single day.
I believe that the money essentially comes from, they're storing this in an off-site facility incurring costs. And that's where this money is coming from.
Yeah, and their staff has been involved in all of our bi-weekly meetings. They've had different staff on the lot. So I don't think it's unreasonable for what they're asking for based on their storage costs and their staff time.
So you say they did have some staff time in over the past year as well as storage costs.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Warren?
Mr. Chairman, I understand this $16,000, and I guess in going back and reflecting and reading the minutes from this one, and I was glad to hear you report that Verizon and AT&T are sharing that cost of $191,000, but that's still a chunk of change for us to have to and pay for out of Kentucky. It just seems like to me that the site preparations and the architects and all for this, in particular the one in Kentucky, we need to try to do a better job in making sure that we've got some provisions, Mr. Hunt, in the contracts. You know, this can't, this kind of expenditure can't keep happening, and I certainly understand what's happened at Tunstall, but, you know, this is 2 months in a row that we're going to end up spending $207,000 that was completely unexpected. Luckily, 2/3 of it just about is going to be paid by outside entities, but we didn't know that for sure. I mean, we were obligated, so I just hope we will do a much better job of being prudent and holding people that are making bids to do projects and all for us and everything. You know, we need to tighten up and let them have to be a little more accountable if they don't give us accurate information.
See, Kentucky, did not require any, now we weren't aware that it was going to need modifications until AT&T came in and did a structural analysis of the tower.
But didn't we have any site engineers or anything that looked at that? Or anybody?
They did the actual design of the work,
So
installed.
that's my point. We hired.
They did pick up that there were going to have to be some modifications in the price.
Yeah, but I mean, they're professionals, that's why we hired them, correct? I mean, I don't have a problem with these bids, I have a problem with them and the fact that we're gonna pay them to do a job, we expect them to get the job done right. Just saying.
All right, thank you, Mr. Warren. Any further discussion? I agree with Mr. Warren on that. Hearing no further discussion, Madam Gazette.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
That motion carries by 5 that are for and 2 that oppose.
Thank you.
Item 13, appointments. appointment DCC Board of Trustees, John Mead. Mr. McCluster.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Danville Community College Board of Trustees is composed of 9 members, 3 of which are at-large members from the county appointed by the board. John Mead currently serves on the DCC Board of Trustees as one such member. His term will expire on June the 30th, and he is eligible for another 4-year term beginning on July 1. County staff received a letter that is attached in your board packet from Betty Foster, interim DCC president, requesting that John Mead be reappointed. Staff submits this item to the board for its review and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McCluster. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Mead to the Danville Community College Board of Trustees.
Motion
For your
made.
term.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Motion made by Mr. Blackstock,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Farmer. I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Blackstock. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
Unanimous, Mr. Mead is reappointed. Item B, appointment DCC Board of Trustees at large seat. Ms. McCluster.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is another Danville Community College Board of Trustees appointment. Mr. Eastwood has fulfilled his terms on the Danville Community College Board of Trustees, which will leave a vacancy as of July 1, 2019. This is a 4-year term that will begin on July the 1st, and it is an at-large seat. We are submitting this item to the board for your review and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McCluster. Mr. Warren.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend that we appoint Lillian Cassida. Ms. Cassida has a long past career, now retired in education, having worked for the Danville Public Schools and Pittsylvania County Public Schools as an assistant superintendent, so I feel like she's highly qualified for the position, and I'm happy to say she's willing to serve. This will be the first time that she stepped out and held any kind of position or appointment, so I'm very excited to see some new blood and some fresh thoughts and ideas maybe coming forward, so I really appreciate her being able to serve.
Motion made. Ms. Cassida, made by Mr. Warren. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Dr. Miller. Is there any further discussion? I would echo the same thoughts as Mr. Warren said, because I had the opportunity to talk to Ms. Cassida. She's been in place when she retired, 40 years in education?
Yes, sir.
So, that's right, okay. So I do appreciate that, and she was very honored, I would say to the board members when I had my conversation with her, she's extremely honored and humbled that we even considered or even thought of her. So she's fully committed, her and her husband, both are very excited. And so I think it'd be a very good appointment, not only for Pittsylvania County, but the city as well in our educational department down at Community College.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Dr. Miller.
As a matter of comment, I also had the opportunity to work with Mrs. Bassett, and I found her to be a competent person. I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Miller. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
Ms. Cassidy passes with a unanimous vote. Thank you. Appointment Danville, Pittsylvania County Community Services Board, Supervisor Farmer.
Okay. I have the privilege of having an all-star citizen in my district whom I'd like to reappoint, Ms. Kim Vanderhyde, to the Danville, Pittsylvania County Services Board for another 3-year term beginning July 1, 2019.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Farmer, Mr. Vanderhyde. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Barber.
Where's this lady working at?
Yes, what I was wondering, I don't recall ever no one heard that.
She advocated enough times.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Ms. Kimberly G. Vanderhyde?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say she's, obviously, we all know she's an outstanding employee and an outstanding individual. I've had the pleasure of serving on this board with her since she went on, and she has certainly shown that she's value added to the board.
Well, if I was such a comment as that, I think you just need to do the chairman's job for the rest of the year. I would just be glad to sit down. Thank you, I agree, Mr. Warren. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I'll now close the vote.
Ms. Kimberly G. Vanderhyde is appointed, reappointed. Thank you. Item D, appointment Danville, Pittsylvania Community Services Board. Dr. Miller.
Yes, sir, I would like to offer the name of Mr. Dexter Miller to serve on the Pittsylvania Community Services Board. Mr. Miller has shown himself to be willing to serve the county in a number of different capacities, and he indicated he has good pleasure to serve.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Motion made by Dr. Miller for Mr. Dexter Miller. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Barber. Mr. Blackstock. Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Any further discussion? Hearing none? Yes.
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
Mr. Miller goes on, 6 yea, 1 no. Number E, appointment, Library Board, Alice Shelton. Mr. Warren.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend that we reappoint Alice Shelton, please.
I have a motion by Mr. Warren, Ms. Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Blackstock. Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Okay, please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I'll now close the vote.
Unanimous vote, carries. Ms. Shelton. Item F, appointment, Library Board, Shelby Buffington. Mr. Farmer.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Ms. Buffington to the county's library board as the county's Gretna rep for another 4 years, starting on July 1 of 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Second. Second by Mr. Barber. Any further discussion for this appointment? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I'll now close the vote.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Item number 14, matters from the work session. Item A, legislative committee actions items. Mr. Vaden Hunt, Esquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attached in your packet on page 222 is an after-action report from our June 4th, 2019 Legislative Committee meeting. Most of you were in attendance, but some were not, so I'll quickly go over the 5 items we discussed and then ask for some authorization to conduct some public hearings at the July meeting. The first item we talked about was proposed enterprise zone amendments. I won't belabor that point because we just heard about it. You've already authorized staff to add Hargrave to the enterprise zone 57 and notify affected landowners and advertise for a public hearing for that in July. The second issue that was discussed is Mr. Schlemp reviewed a proposed fire and rescue ordinance that an ad hoc committee had been working on for approximately 18 months. Schlemp identified suggested county changes detailed in your packet as Exhibit 1. Following the discussion, the legislative committee endorsed the recommended ordinance changes, and following sending the revised ordinance back to the ad hoc committee and EMAC for review and comment, they unanimously recommended the full BOS that the proposed fire and rescue ordinance be advertised for a public hearing for potential adoption at the July meeting. The third issue we talked about was potential revisions to dog control areas. The legislative committee reviewed some potential changes the county staff had identified, and legislative committee unanimously recommended county staff incorporate those changes and bring a revised ordinance back to the legislative committee at a future date for review and discussion. For the board reviewed a potential lack of control of companion animal ordinance. This ordinance has morphed from an animal nuisance ordinance. It has been tacitly endorsed by the agricultural community, and the legislative committee unanimously recommended the full BOS, authorize county staff to conduct a public hearing to potentially adopt it at July meeting. And finally, Sheriff Michael Taylor discussed adding 5 potential Virginia Code sections to Pittsylvania County Code that he needed on the books to enable him to do some things in fighting crime. He wants, he seeks authorization to get reimbursements for expenses incurred responding to terrorism, hoax, incidents, bomb threats, and malicious activation of firearms. He desires the ability to charge during the punishment phase for meth lab cleanup costs. He desired a code section that prevents interference with pupils at schools, and he desired the adding of a code section that allows the police to enforce trespass violations. And finally, he desired addition to our county code that allows him to dispose of unclaimed property in possession of the sheriff police after notice and the running of a certain period of time. I'm happy to answer any questions. County staff recommends the full board unanimously recommend the public hearings to be held at the July business meeting that are indicated on page 221 of your packet.
Thank you, council. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion authorizing county staff to advertise the above detailed public hearings to be held at the July business meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Makes a motion. Seconded by Mr. Blackstock. Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to ask Mr. Slim, what is the status of going back in front of ad hoc and the other committees that we?
Ad hoc was, Christian, come up to the microphone. Just, can't catch you on the tape if you're screaming from the cheap seats.
The ad hoc committee, I set up a thing last week, trying to get them, when we can get them all together, typed in all the changes that we need to do, and I'm waiting to hear back from 2 more of them, trying to get that by next week, because they're really get off the plate. So, just waiting to hear from 2 more members. Mr. Scarce and I were just talking about that, actually before the board meeting, so that's kind of where we are this week.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I just have one more question. Have you provided them the changes yet, or?
No, I can send those out, I was still typing when I sent that out the other day, so we'll send those out with them to go ahead and start getting review on them.
Thank you, Mr. Slim. Anything further?
You won't be in a bind if they review them and they don't agree with them. I guess we could cancel the public hearing. Is that true, Mr. Hunt?
Sure you can.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast, so now close the vote.
Item A carries unanimously. Thank you. Item B, Go Virginia Robotic Grant Match Funding Commitment Confirmation. Mr. Gregory L. Stiles.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, as you recall from the work session earlier, this is where we come up with a motion that expressed the interest in funding this project, but denies the funds out. I believe the county attorney suggested language to Ms. McCluster that you have a revised motion at this point.
I have it. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to appropriate $96,126 from unused grant proceeds for FY 2020 and seek $96,126 from the county's Industrial Development Authority for FY 2021 and $96,126 from the Pittsylvania County Schools for FY 2022.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Blackstock,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Barber. Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast, I will now close the vote.
This motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item C, out-of-county solid waste. Mr. Hicks?
We made a presentation at the Solid Waste Committee meeting this afternoon about the possibility of submitting a proposal for the acceptance of Bedford County waste. That recommendation was forwarded to the workshop and also forwarded to this meeting. So at this time, we would like to ask the board to make a motion to authorize county staff to submit a proposal to potentially dispose of Bedford County's solid waste.
I have a motion here, Mr. Warren, you chair that committee.
No, go ahead, Mr. Blackstock, thank you.
I make a motion to authorize county staff to submit a proposal to potentially dispose of Bedford County's solid waste.
Okay. Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, Bedford's waste.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Warren. Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast, I will now close the vote.
That item passes. Thank you. Item 15, board member. Wait a minute here. We have to go.
Right.
Well, you're right, why don't you knock out 15 and 16, and then we'll go into closed session after that. So you're right, 15, board member reports.
Board member reports. Do we have any from Mr. Barber?
Oh, I've done, I just was thinking, I'd welcome the new people in Pittsylvania County from wherever I hope I get here.
Thank you. Mr. Blackstock?
You should get Mr. Scans over there.
You got, I'm trying to go in alphabetical order.
Okay. All right. We have a radio by Mr. Lanier and his wife over in the community of Grit, which is a her address, but this weekend, and we would like to invite everybody over our way for a little economic development venture and a lot of fun. So,
What time is it?
I think it starts at like 5:30, and the fun does, and the bucket starts at 7.
What day?
This weekend,
Oh, we,
Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
Friday and Saturday.
All right. Thank you.
you ready?
Nah, I don't do no riding. I ride the lawn chairs.
Mr. Farmer?
It's not in my district, but I'd like to recognize the Chatham High School baseball team winning the state championship. That's great to bring the trophy back to our county. And then also, I'd like to recognize, even though this is not in my district either, but recently, we've had some pretty devastating storms, and the town of Hurt was hit tremendously hard, and I think Mayor Poindexter handled it admirably. And so I just want to recognize him and all the folks, all the volunteers that helped with all the tree damage and power outages.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Poindexter. Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Dr. Miller?
Yes, sir, I would just like to say that I'm personally very pleased at all of the prayers and good thoughts that went up in regards to our uranium concerns and the wisdom of the Supreme Court to uphold Virginia's moratorium on said subject.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Mr. Scares.
I have nothing this month, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Warren.
Well, Mr. Farmer stole a little bit of my thunder down there.
Just put it on tea for you.
There you go. We're happy to report that Chatham High School is once again state champions in baseball, and congratulate Mr. Chad Anderson coaching. He had led them to their last state championship, and this was his first year back as coach. And it was outstanding to see these young folks do that. And again, if you remember, Mr. Anderson had a golfer here last season that was also a state champion. So it sounds like we got a leader over there. Maybe we need to try to see if we can find a place to put Mr. Anderson. Seems like he knows how to get a team together. So congratulations to all those young folks. And Chatham High School will have a new principal this year and a principal that's retiring. So what a way to go out and what a way to start. So congratulations to all those folks. And I too, Mr. Farmer, would comment on how wonderful the volunteers and everything was for HERT. It was outstanding to see how everything was going, and it's certainly kudos to Mr. Blackstock and the area that he represents. And I also want to thank Mr. Smitherman, Mr. Slimp, and Mr. Hicks on jumping out in front of that and waiving those tipping fees till we could get here in a meeting and do that. I think that was certainly a great thing to do for those citizens. They were facing enough without having to worry about those kind of things. So I thank our staff for all of their efforts too. Mr. Slimp, I know you were heavily involved in that, and I'm sure all the deputies were heavily involved in that too. That was a real tragedy up there for that area. So I'm glad everybody came through safe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would like to comment and compliment Mr. Greg Side, Ms. Kevin McCluster, our IT department, Kevin and Joshua, Mr. Hicks. I want to leave you out. This is twice you got it tonight. Ms. Vanderhyde, I want to thank you. Mr. Slimp, I want to thank both CAs, and that stands for County Attorney and County Administrator. I also want to thank our law enforcement people who always do a bang-up job. We appreciate your time. And I also want to thank the media and those of our guests who attended tonight. The staff, I appreciate the staff's encouragement. You said, why are you saying all this? This is 6 months in, and I've fumbled all the way up to this point. And I do want to thank you guys for the encouragement and the efficiency practiced today. However, it took a little while for the county attorney and the staff to kind of reel me in and to kind of get me on the string just a little bit. So I do want to appreciate the efficiency that has been practiced tonight, and thank you to all. Mr. Hicks, you again, third time. So I just want to make sure that we get Colonel Sanders involved. We appreciate your time and effort. And I would like to also thank the board of supervisors, because this is not a very easy job. Not that we look at it and complain necessarily, but it is a very demanding job. And it's not for the weak or faint of heart, I can most assure you. And I do thank you that we have a good board of supervisors, in my opinion, that's in place, that's pushing Pittsylvania County forward into the year 2020 and further on. I want to thank you for that. Now, if you please, with all that said, the county administrator, do you have any reports, sir?
I'll just say two things real briefly. One, we're going to give you a more thorough update next month, and that's the performance of the Pet Center over the last 6 months. 6 months ago, we were all gnashing our teeth at how we were going to pay for it, why did it cost so much, are we going to be able to do it? Next month, you're going to get a report from the Pet Center, from James McLaughlin, and you're going to hear some really great things, especially financially. that's going on down there. So I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised at what we've been able to do in our first 6 months of operation, and it's largely due to James's work. The other person I'd like to call out in appreciation is really a group of people, and you've heard the results of their work this evening, is our small crew of, I think, 4 that work the landfill pit under Mr. Hicks's direction. So I'll give the Colonel one more shout out, because under his direction we have tremendously increased our compaction. Our lifespan of the landfill, as we heard this evening, is now over 140 years. And you saw the before and after pictures of what it looked like 12 months ago versus what it looks like today. And that's because we were focused on a good product, and our people wanted to do the best job they could. And all they needed was the encouragement and a little bit of training. And what we've seen is we are maximizing the Pittsylvania County taxpayer's asset, which gives you the ability to go out and further help the taxpayer by potentially bringing in additional revenue from Bedford County. So I wanted to bring that attention to you and the public of what a great job we've done down at the landfill over the last 12 months. Thank you, sir.
I do agree with that. Mr. Counselor, Mr. J. Vayden Hunt Esquire. You have anything, sir?
I have nothing, sir.
Thank you. Now, item number 16A, we're going into closed session.
I'll read the motion, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. Staff contact Richard N. Hicks, Colonel. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A3, subject matter, potential solid waste convenience center sites. Purpose, discussion of acquisition of real property for a public purpose. We need a motion, a second, discussion, and a vote, please.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter closed session.
Motion made by Mr. Warren,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Blackstock. Any discussion at all? Hearing none.
We have to do roll call. I did shut down.
Let's do roll call.
Mr. Chairman, we're re-entering open session at 8:24 p.m. Now, with your permission, I will read the closed meeting certification. Be it resolved that a meeting of the Pittsylvania County Board of Supervisors on June 18, 2019, the board hereby certifies by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business meetings lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. If any board member believes that there was a departure from the requirements of the Act, he shall so state prior to the vote indicating the substance of the departure. The statement shall be recorded in the board's minutes. Is this an oral or computer? Okay. I will now do a roll call. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
I declare this meeting adjourned.
Yes, vote.